Welcome to AITV News. A stark warning is reverberating through the NATO alliance today. The United States Defense Secretary has cautioned that allies cannot depend solely on America for their defense and must significantly increase their own military spending. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth delivered an unambiguous message. America can't be everywhere all the time, nor should we be. Now it's time for Europe to step up. This call for greater European defense investment is strongly backed by U.S. President Donald Trump, who has consistently urged NATO allies to shoulder a larger share of the collective defense burden. The U.S. is now advocating for a new, ambitious defense spending target for NATO members, 5% of each nation's gross domestic product, or GDP, which is a measure of a country's total economic output. This proposed 5% includes 3.5% for direct military spending, or hard defense, and 1.5% for related security infrastructure like military transport, cyber defenses, and intelligence. Speaking after talks with fellow NATO defense ministers in Brussels earlier today, June 5th, Secretary Hegseth reported near consensus on this 5% goal. This marks a significant potential increase from the 2% GDP target established back in 2014. So, why this American push now? It reflects President Trump's persistent call for NATO allies to contribute their fair share. Secretary Hegseth underscored the urgency, citing current global threats. When you consider the threats that we face, the urgency in the world, it's critical. These threats encompass the ongoing war in Ukraine and challenges posed by nations like China, Iran, and North Korea. The U.S. is stressing the need for tangible military strength. As Hegseth bluntly put it, we don't need more flags, we need more fighting formations. We don't need more conferences, we need more capabilities, hard power. With the U.S. itself investing close to $1 trillion annually in its own defense, it expects European and Canadian allies to bolster their contributions. Hegseth also suggested President Trump's pressure has reinvigorated an alliance he felt was sleepwalking to irrelevance. By 2024, 23 out of NATO's 32 members were reportedly meeting or exceeding the existing 2% spending target, a significant rise from only 6 members in 2018. Secretary Hegseth stated that many countries, including France, the Baltic states, Nordic nations, Poland, Greece, and Hungary, are committed to this new 5% goal. Notably, Germany has also signaled its support for this increase. However, not all allies are ready to commit. The U.S. has specifically pressed the United Kingdom to meet the 5% target. The UK government, under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, plans to increase defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, aiming for 3% in a subsequent parliamentary term. Prime Minister Starmer is expected to discuss this matter with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte shortly. Secretary Hegseth acknowledged that there are a few countries that are not quite there yet, without specifying which ones. Reports suggest Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Luxembourg, nations that have historically spent less on defense, have reservations. Spain's defense minister indicated they would adhere to the 2% target, deeming it enough, but would not obstruct a collective NATO decision for an increase. Italy is also considered a holdout, having pledged to meet the 2% threshold by the end of 2025. Canada's defense spending stood at roughly 1.3% of GDP in 2024. To date, no NATO member has achieved the proposed 5% spending level.
Secretary Hegseth dismissed suggestions the U.S. might leave NATO if allies don't boost spending. However, he did state the U.S. will continually assess our force posture and is reviewing everything. This review is reportedly part of a U.S. interim defense strategy that includes focusing on its southern border, redirecting attention to the Indo-Pacific, and enhancing global burden sharing. A NATO leaders' summit is slated for late June in The Hague, where a formal decision on the new spending target is expected. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has proposed 2032 as a potential deadline for member states to meet any new targets.
This American push for greater Allied spending signals a potential shift towards more European self-reliance in defense. It could also prompt adjustments to the U.S. military footprint in Europe, and will demand substantial financial commitments from member nations, possibly testing NATO's unity. This is a developing story, and AITV News will continue to provide updates.